So I decided to do a Natural Edge Chalice with 2 captured rings and a twisted stem, and do it as a voiceover so that I can kind of explain what I'm doing as I go. So there you saw me cut the tenon, and now I'm flip it around, and I've got the ring tool out, hollowing out the end grain for the cup of the chalice. Left some bark around there, of course, for the natural edge. This part actually can be done with a bowl gouge. You don't have to have a ring tool. I like my ring tool. It's kind of spoiled me already. That's a piece of MDF with a 3/4 inch foam pad on it. I use that to stabilize the end. Of course, I put it up there, then realized I really don't need that yet. I need to figure out how thick my wall is going to be on my cup, so I took it back off. But I use it again here a little bit. So anyway, I don't want to get the walls of the cup too thin just yet, because simply because with the foam pad up there, you're putting some pressure on that outside rim, and I don't want to knock the bark loose or anything. This is actually a maple sapling that was about 3 inches or maybe 3.5 inches in diameter. So the bark is real solid on it. I was actually quite pleased about that. So the trick with these, when you're doing this twisted stem inside of the rings, is that you've got to do the whole stem. So I make the stem kind of big, that, and I'm carving into it, so I don't want it too thin. If you want to see a guy that can do really thin stuff, go watch some of Stewart Mortimer's videos. I'll put a link to his channel, well, I'm going to put a link to his channel. I'll also put a link to one of his videos where he teaches how to do the twist, which is his how-to is amazing on that. I'll explain what I do, but he's got a little bit different methods, and quite frankly, I've picked up some of his and I use them. So, but anyway, here we got the first ring kind of decked out there, and I'm going to chisel down the stem a little bit, and I'll make the other ring at the bottom end. I have a pair of tools that I made some time ago that are just little hooks that get in underneath of it, and that way I can make the stem real close to the ring. So it's like the ring is like sliding, almost touching the stem. I like having the ring real tight to the stem like that. Makes it even more difficult because people go, "How did you get in there?" It's like, well, I made special tools to do it. So there's cleaning up in between. Now I'm getting down to where I'm going to start knocking those things loose. So there's the little hook tool I was talking about, and then there's the other one. There's 2 of them. I got one for each side. The way they're beveled, that's the way they work. Nice thing about that is you can get in there with a sandpaper and actually sand most of the inside of the ring before you knock it loose. Makes things a little simpler. Here goes the first one. There it's loose. The second one took me a little longer to get knocked loose here. And it should go right about now. There we go. Alright. Now I'm going to clean up at the top and bottom on the stem, and then put my detail into the bottom of the cup and to the oh yeah, use the rubber bands to hold the rings to one end while I'm working at the other. That's a neat trick. I hadn't even thought of that until I was doing this video. Usually I use tape, and it was like I couldn't find my tape, but I knew there were some rubber bands around, so there they were. Anyway, did the detail on the bottom of the cup there, and now I'm going to do the detail at the top of the base. Then once those are done, I'll go ahead and sand that middle part and start marking it out. I did use the indexing function on the lathe to mark it out, but you don't need that for this particular layout. You mark the ends, the center, and then the quarters like that. And then you can actually use the jaws points. If you have a 4-jaw chuck, use the jaw points of the chuck to get your 4 quarters. And then just draw the lines, just extend the lines down the stem. Anyway, I split all of the quarters in half again and made eighths, and then draw that diagonal line between each of the eighths one time down it, and then cut along the line, Once that's accomplished, I decided that I didn't like how wide the bite was, so I put a second line exactly opposite of it and made this a double twist. And you'll see that here in just a second. There, I'm drawing the second line and then cutting it. Go back with the chisel, knock it out, and then get it V'd. And then to use a rasp to start rounding it out a little bit. I use several different rasps. Pardon me. This is just a round rasp, a real coarse one. And then I come back in with a triangular one, like that, which is a real fine one. I couldn't find my coarser triangular one at the time, and had that one handy, so I just used it. That kind of V's it out. Then I come back with a round one, and I'm actually going exactly at 90 degrees to the stem. This starts rounding over the bites of the twist. And then I grabbed my little chisel, decided that I could round it over faster with that. So I just took the corners of all the bites off with the chisel. The real round over happens when you start sanding with 120 or with 80, depending on what type of wood you have. This is, like I said, this is a maple. It's a sugar maple, so it's rather soft compared to like hard rock maple or something like that. But so once I get it all cleaned up, then I'm going to do a little bit more filing, and then I get the sandpaper out. And this first part of sanding, all I'm doing is by hand. I mean, I'm not rotating the lathe or anything. I did start locking it in to kind of keep it from rotating, actually. That's just a piece of a 120 folded over on itself. You'd be surprised how fast it actually starts smoothing out. If you've got a good sharp chisel and you leave smooth cuts, then all you're doing is taking the little bumps between the chips off, and it goes pretty darn quick. There it is, just a piece of 120 sandpaper for a orbital sander. I fold a lot of hook and loop sandpaper, actually, and use it instead of using it on a orbital sander. I use it by hand. Kind of expensive way to do it, but you know, it's what I'm used to. And then I broke out the 220 at this point too, and started taking care of that. A little bit of touch up with a file here and there. Nothing major. Then I put the lathe at about 250, maybe 300 RPM, and would follow the lines of the thing with the sandpaper over and over and over and over. It's actually appears to be going rather slowly there, but that's because I slowed down the high speed in order to kind of show you more what was going on. Reversed it. The rubber band's actually kind of wrapped around the stem there, holding the rings from flying to the other end. So anyway, I did that with the 120 and then the 220. And then I believe here I'm going to start working the, I took the block away from the end, the padded block away from the end to start sanding the inside of the cup and outside of the cup. I decided not to make it any thinner. It was already bound about maybe 3/16, quarter at the bottom, 3/16 toward the top. Started working the base a little bit. Was wanting to leave bark all the way around the base, but it didn't work out that way. Apparently when I was roughing it in the middle, I slipped over too far and got into the area that was going to be the base and did away with that. So ended up just leaving a little bit of the inner bark, and there's like one patch of actual bark on it. So cutting in towards underneath the base here, getting ready to part off, not quite yet. I just wanted to get it sanded and such. And then I break out the 320 here in a minute. Just a little more 120. So here's the 320. What I do is I take and cut sections open and then twist the whole thing, and it kind of lets the sandpaper flex better. And then I use that trick of turning it on slow, you know, 300 RPM or so, and run it up and down the twist. And then it's pretty much done. Break out the oil. Use boiled linseed oil. I let it sit with that on it for a couple days before I actually put the final finish on. Which this one's going to be lacquer. I'm not. This is not for use. It's just a pretty, you know, make people look at it and go, "How'd you put those rings on?" I like doing that. I like making people look at stuff and go, "How did you do that?" So there, I'm getting ready to part it off. I get it down nice and thin, and then take the saw and finish it off. I don't like parting them all the way off because it twists the grain at the bottom. Use my little grinder and grind the nub off, and then break out the little sander and drill, kind of sand it. And there it is. Lots of fun. Anyway, well, hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something from it. And if you haven't subscribed, do so. There's more to come.